thank you so much. I just wasted the whole... Alright, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. When I was doing some testing earlier, I had to turn my mic off. So thank you. So let me start that again. Oh my God. I want to cry. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have a special guest today. We have two special guests. We've got Paul, as always. Thank you so much, Mia. Thank you. We have Paul, but Paul is not our very special guest for today because we also have Taiwai, who is going to be talking to us about asexuality and aromanticism. And I want to make sure that I pronounce that right because I feel like I get it wrong. But talking about how it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, or not one-size-fits-all approach. It's not quite like that either. It's that there are umbrellas of experience. It's not just, you know, one situation for one person. This could be two very different things for different people. And Taiwai, our special guest, they are the host of the Aspec podcast. So I want to talk to them a little bit more about that because I've seen stuff that they do on YouTube, and they've explored so many different subjects with their podcast episodes, which just goes to show how vast the conversations can be. And yeah, talking about the evolution of the terms within the community. I'm excited to learn a lot more. I feel like my knowledge is not deep enough in these areas, and it should be. So I would like that. Thank you, Nate. Hello. OSG, I am not trans. I support the trans community though. Big love to the trans community. King Ricky Rich, hello. You will see down here what we're going to be talking about, but I'm gonna get Taiwai on the show in a sec, but I'm just going to move a couple of things around. When we do different streams, we have different things that get moved a little bit, so we're going to move them. That can go there, I guess, maybe. Nate, that's nice. Good for you. Good for you. Hi, Kay. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Hello, Black Compass. All looking very chill. Very chill. Very, very chill. Very excited to hear this talk. I'm excited. We're waiting for the ads to go because the ads are in the way at the moment. Bloody ads. But also thank you to anyone that's listening and watching the ads. Oh, and Kay also is looking at the ads. I'm queer. For those people demanding to know. Alright. So, let's get things ready over here. And then let's let them know that we are almost ready. So they also stream on Twitch. You can see on the chat, on the title, what their handle is for Twitch as well, if you want to follow them. Nate, I don't think you should be saying that in a YouTube chat. So yeah, that kind of comments are not welcome, and I won't give you any more attention. You like your stop? Hi Kay, thank you so much. Thank you. Right. Just bringing up stream together. All right. Maybe that was insensitive. Maybe that was insensitive of me. But hopefully there are things that you can find that are good. I can't tell if trolling because of the terminology or the way you said something, but yeah. I'm gonna bring up stream together now, and then I'm gonna see if I can invite guest. Taiwai is just chatting. Send invite. Blah. Not muting audio because we need the audio. Not trolling, that's fair. That's fair. I can understand in this day and age things are not fun. I do know that much. I absolutely do know that much. Right, has it sent? And I will send an invite link as well. That's the invite link. Now they will be in the middle of their chatting as well, so we got to give them some time to, you know, explain what's going on and all of that. I'm sorry, Nate. I'm sorry that happened. That's very sad. And I hope you have a good support network around you, because that's also really important. Hello, Spiky. Hello, how are you doing? Hello, Kyla and I. Hello. How you doing, Kyla? How is everyone? Did anyone have their tea or coffee yet? Mine is here. I got water as well. I got tea. It's not as much milk as I would like, but we haven't got that much milk at the moment, so don't at me. I also wonder if I want to put some background music on, or if I will just leave as is. Chat, do you think we should have some background music or no? I'm sorry, Nate. Grief is hard. Grief is also a hard thing to navigate. I've been there, so sending the biggest hugs to you. I know that doesn't fix things, but I hope you can find strength to carry on, because it's important. It is important. She wouldn't want you to carry on life like this, huh? You are hosting for Rebecca's birthday today. Everyone's gonna have, oh gosh, okay. You got roped into that, huh? Let's see. Okay, they're still doing some things and stuff. I've got the. Oh, I could also use my cam and do a virtual cam for them. I want to get the scene. We want to get the. Okay. Start using virtual cam, and then that is also there. Cool. I hope they're doing okay. I know they're, like I say, they've started their stream too, so it could be that they're just kind of in the middle of introducing things, talking about things. Yada yada. Yes. Yes, it looks like they're kind of just introducing things. So that's cool. All right. Okay. Looks like they are. Okay. All right. Hello, Blondie. Hi. Hello, hello. Hello, Martin. I am English, yes. Yes, yes. Oh, okay. I see Ty there. Hello. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Now, I can Okay, hello.
Hello.
Oh my goodness, it works.
It does.
Right, okay. I'm gonna just quickly change my scene as well
Yeah,
because then I can get your wonderful face on for everyone to see.
absolutely.
All right, now does this work? This thing. Da, 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 da.
This is actually my
That
first time
should
using
work.
the camera on this,
Oh
so
yeah. So we'll see if it
gotta
works.
figure this out.
Aha! Okay, I got you. I got you.
Hello.
All right, and then we just need to make you a little bit bigger. So there's like, I always feel so stressed when I'm moving things around. I'm like, no, we're fine. This is fine. We're just
It's
there.
fine. This is fine.
This is fine, and everything just on fire around me. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Taiwai is here. So
I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on. You're a well versed podcast host with the A-Spec podcast. I've seen quite a few of your episodes on YouTube, so you know your stuff, especially when it comes
Thank
to
you.
the A's of the LGBTQA plus.
And aromantic as well.
Yep, yep. Oh yes, because that's so. Is that not included in?
Yeah, so
Okay.
ASPEC is like a broad encompassing term that includes asexuality and aromanticism.
Yes, very good. That is true. That is what I should have said. And let me see. So our main broad focus title is about asexuality and aromanticism, but there are. I mean, you were telling me that they're separate.
Yeah, so there's separate
And
identities.
yes, and there's so much. So even where to start, like in talking about the fact that they are umbrellas of experience, that no two people, and like a lot of situations, no two people will have the same experience. But you also were talking about how the terms evolved in the context of the community, and I'd love to know a bit more about that as well.
Absolutely. So I prepared a few notes, kind of talking about the history of the terms in the community, which we can definitely chat about. Happy to do that
Yeah.
because it's really interesting to see, how they, how we talked about experiences of asexuality back in, say, the late 1800s when it was pretty much completely pathologized as a medical issue.
Right.
Still, unfortunately, is in many medical situations.
Right.
And then we go from that to this term that really describes the lived experience and the lack of sexual attraction as a orientation and not a pathologized medical issue.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Also, in my ADHD chaos, how about you tell us a bit about yourself to
Absolutely.
start with? That would be nice to start with. Give it a couple of things, but yeah. I'd like to hear more about you and tell the community
Definitely.
what you can.
So my name is Taiwai, non-binary Aero Aspec PhD candidate by day, and content creator with a big focus on asexuality and aromanticism. Um, I guess advocacy, if you will. So in locally here, I help run a support group for ace and arrow folks once a month, and so that was actually a big kind of contributor to this podcast. Was the experience I've had as a co-facilitator, talking with folks here locally about their lived experiences as asexual and aromantic individuals, and we've had many of these same discussions in the support group, and through this and the work I've done, I've had this wonderful opportunity to amass a bunch of this knowledge, develop kind of questions over time that I've then turned into podcast episodes in the last year since it started in July.
Right. That's a lot. But that is pretty useful as well. Like you say, the where you're co-facilitating with the local stuff, there's a lot of, I guess, references that you can talk about and things that pop up as you go along. Hang on, someone said your volume is low. Guys, can you still hear it okay? Did it drop by a lot? That sounds odd. I can still hear you.
Yeah. I've got it. I've tried to get it equalized on my mixer, but it's always difficult.
Okay. It seems like it's a bit better now. Let me turn it.
How is Phoebe's volume on my end, folks?
Hello.
Might need to turn you up a tiny bit.
That's okay. Can hear just. Oh, I sound louder. Let me turn myself down a little.
Perfect.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, so that's what was the inspiration for the podcast then? The fact that you do these.
In the second source of inspiration was a raid train I participated in last June, put on by a fellow Pride Guild member, Shania.
Yeah.
And they started a raid train for Ace and Arrow folks. And through that, I met so many folks that have subsequently been on the podcast.
Yeah.
And it was kind of these two things that were like, okay, got the background knowledge. I now know a bunch of content creators who are comfortable talking about their lived experiences. And there doesn't seem to be a space on Twitch currently where this is being discussed.
No.
And then I was like, why not host a podcast about it?
It's really good for me, and I know you've even mentioned it before when we were talking in messages on Discord that asexuality is kind of known as the invisible orientation. And like when I was reaching out to people in the Pride Guild, thank you so much, by the way, for being here, because there are so many different conversations to be had and so much more to know, so much more to learn, so much more to educate others, that when you mention these things, I was like, perfect, because I didn't have anyone else that identified or had things to talk about under either asexuality or aromanticism. So this, like, the double whammy bonus extravaganza. I hope that doesn't sound, because whilst I'm saying this is great, I don't want it to sound like, like some people fetishize things or make it, use people as the token. That I don't know. It feels
totally understand
icky,
what you're saying,
right? But I was like, this. I really, I want to learn more. And if I'm learning more, I'm sure some of our community are learning more, and I can learn a bit more about people in the community as well, because there are people who identify as either or in the community. So that was really cool. And and I you're right, I didn't see anything where I could learn about things in either a live podcast or references I would get or learn about more would be just like Googling stuff, but it wouldn't be, it would be like literature and things like that. So it's really useful to have this, and the fact that you do live streams as well is really useful, because I'm sure people can ask questions, and when you've got the capacity, you can talk about those, or even suggest things to talk about in your next one. So
exactly. I get a lot of great ideas through the folks in the chat, and that's really kind of great, because I'm able to adapt to questions in real time, unlike, say a video essay,
Yeah.
um, which, there are some great video essays and folks that do discuss asexuality and aromanticism on YouTube,
Hmm.
but it's mostly in a video format, and there's not this same focus on live streams,
Yeah.
especially on Twitch, I've found.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like that train of thought and things that come up as you say things, questions that might
Yeah.
arise that it's literally you're talking as if you're having a conversation. I think that's, yeah, super super useful. And just like, putting that on while you're going for a drive, or putting that on while you're doing the housework, it's really like very useful to listen to podcasts like that. I really do like podcasts for that reason. So yeah, that's great. And the Pride Guild, I don't know about you, but well, you kind of said already, like the amount of access to resources that have kind of increased tenfold, and the amount of people that I've been able to talk to and ask questions, and also kind of ask to correct me if I say the wrong thing, and everyone's kind of really friendly and really patient with people. And I think it's one of the best things that I've discovered or been part of, since doing this on Twitch and wanting to learn more and educate and be educated. So yeah, very
Coziest
cool.
Fox, who just popped in the chat, was a recent guest on the podcast, fellow
Yes.
Fruity Stream team member as well. We had a
Oh,
really great
nice.
chat about demisexuality and just how much erasure demisexuality experiences, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad that there are things around erasure, and that people can't just be accepted for their. It's just them, isn't it? That doesn't make it any less valid or any less real. I think it is so important to make sure people know they're welcome in the community for any of that. I mean, well, I started out thinking I was bi, and then going to pan, and then it's like queer is kind of easier for me. But there's so much around that, and people kind of say, oh well, if you're with a cishet male, you're not into women, you're not into, you can't be into both. And if you're with a woman, it's like, oh, you're just a lesbian then. It's that whole kind of, no. And demisexuality, is that the term? Demisexual, I hear a lot about similar experiences. It's like, well, you're either this or that. You can't be this. Like, no, this is why these terms are introduced, to help people kind of identify better, and not just a one thing fits all. But yeah, it's very reductive for people to say that, as I'd said.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of folks who are, demi or ace in what people read as straight passing relationships get all sorts of erasure, on a similar token. It's like, oh, you're in something that looks heterosexual. How dare you, be part of the queer community? How dare you say that you're oppressed? The most ironic part of that is that's oppression itself.
Yeah.
They're oppressing you by saying
it's
that.
literally, it's really unfair. Hopefully there's a lot more awareness that's spread, and people can maybe think twice about the treatment of others that they carry out. But I mean, frustratingly, there are some people that just don't want to know, don't want to hear. But there are a lot that I've seen kind of change their stance, or maybe just by doing things like this, kind of listening and thinking, oh yeah, actually maybe I was wrong. I guess our jobs are using the platforms for good, and just hoping that people out there can listen, and people out there can relate as well, knowing that they're not alone, and that a lot of us do talk about these things together, and maybe experience these things together is kind of quite useful. Cozy Fox as a married demi, I obviously agree. Yeah, yeah. And so the terms and how they've evolved.
Absolutely.
So do you want to start with asexuality and go
Absolutely.
through there?
We can start with that. And one of the things that I like to sort of couch this around is starting by a really brief definition of something called the split attraction model, because I think this really helps to differentiate how asexuality and aromanticism are different. So the split attraction model in the simplest form says that one's sexual attraction, one's sexual orientation is different than one's romantic attraction or romantic orientation. So you might be sexually attracted to males or anybody, but your romantic orientation could be something completely different. For many folks, for cis het folks, their sexual attraction and their romantic attraction are the same, and so people don't necessarily consider them as being separate, but they are separate under the model of the split attraction model, separate orientations. And this is really an important distinction for many folks, who are ace and aro, because if you're asexual, you experience little to no sexual attraction. It doesn't talk at all about your romantic attraction. There are many asexual folks who experience romantic attraction, the so-called ace allos. So if we say allosexual, it means that you experience sexual attraction in the way that the general norm, if you will, experiences it, as opposed to somebody who's experienced little to no sexual attraction.
Right.
And so allo is kind of the opposite of a in this context.
Okay.
But we can kind of go beyond by just talking about just sexual attraction or romantic attraction, and keep in mind that there's other types of attraction too. So, if you find somebody aesthetically beautiful, that could be seen as aesthetic attraction. And for many ace folks, this is what many ace folks, when they're growing up, confuse as sexual attraction. They're like, wow, this person looks beautiful. I must be sexually attracted to them. But no, merely it is, I like the appearance of this individual, but I'm not sexually attracted to them in any way. But without some sort of context of that, it can be difficult to tell the difference.
Yeah, even I would get that confused. Or at least, you say someone's aesthetically pleasing, and then if you find that maybe you're not sexually attracted to them, that could be like, oh, why is there something wrong with me? Is this, or is this, why is that? So yeah, that does make a lot of sense. You can like the appearance of someone but not find them sexually attractive. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and then you've got things like platonic attraction. I want to be friends with somebody. This is what many aro folks confuse as the so-called romantic crush. When I was growing up, I was heavily bullied in school. I was the so-called nerd that didn't get, that everybody picked on, and I was kind of socially isolated. And I just desperately wanted to fit in. And, there were folks that was like, I really want to be your friend because you seem like a cool person. And I think growing up, I mistook that as a romantic crush. But I think looking back on it, this was like, no, I just really wanted to be friends with this person, so-called platonic attraction. But that's so easy to mistake as a crush if you don't have any other sort of context for that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, not have, and being picked on, and for someone to even take an interest in your welfare, it's kind of easy to go, oh wow, this person clearly cares. but then depending on your experience, there might be different ways to take that. So that all makes sense. That's interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of just a brief overview of the split attraction model. And from there, we can say, all right, if you're asexual, you experience little to no sexual attraction, irregardless of who it might be to. It's little to no sexual attraction. That's the main defining identity under asexuality. And so it's a spectrum because it's little to no. So folks under the gray umbrella of asexuality, like myself, may experience limited sexual attraction under different circumstances.
Yep.
For demi folks, the most common, definition is you don't experience sexual attraction unless you've developed a close emotional bond with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And so really what it is that it's a secondary sexual attraction, and I'm sure that Coziest Fox could explain it much better than me. I'm not demi myself, but that secondary sexual attraction doesn't appear until you've got a close emotional bond. And if you find yourself falling out of that, having that close emotional bond, that's secondary sexual attraction can disappear just as easily.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense as well. Building that bond with someone and take it away, which it's so unfair for people to be what's the word, challenged by it when it makes a lot of sense that establishing a bond with someone and feeling safe with someone and that can lead to more feeling anyway, you would think. So it does make perfect sense. Just thinking about how people can shun that when it shouldn't be shunned, it really is logical. I can't speak for others, but I'm always trying to imagine how that works, and even just learning these particular things. Like I read about them and I get them confused, so I have to make sure I kind of Google and double check what certain things are, but I don't like to assume or say the wrong things either. But these are all really useful to know.
Absolutely. And there's so many micro labels that fall under asexuality. It's so easy for folks that don't necessarily understand those micro labels to confuse them or misinterpret what they mean, especially if you have no lived experience with that label. Like I can't say that I fully understand the demi experience because I myself am not demi. What I can understand is that there's aspects of the demi experience in that you don't experience or you experience limited sexual attraction. I can certainly relate to that.
That's good.
But each one of the micro labels is a little bit different in the way that limited sexual attraction might appear.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Different for so many others. Yeah, and it could, like you say, little to none.
Yeah,
is a broad spectrum in itself, isn't it?
Exactly.
That people don't realise. Like, I do remember someone just saying, "Oh, asexuality. That's when people just don't have any attraction to anyone." It's like,
so there is a specific micro label, asexual, which is that, but asexual is also used as an umbrella term to encompass that spectrum. And so I think that's where people get it confused.
Get a bit confused. That makes sense too. Okay. And then any more under that term? Well, it's probably
asexual or demisexual?
Both actually. I've got so many questions that I would.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, where were you going on to?
I was going to reply to adpocalyptic. So demisexual attraction is that there's no sexual attraction that you would experience with somebody unless you've developed a close emotional bond. For folks who are alloromantic and demisexual, they may have romantic attraction to somebody prior to that secondary sexual attraction appearing, but not always. You know, you might be demi-romantic and demisexual, in that you've got to get to know somebody really well before those secondary types of attractions start to appear. And that's where it gets really confusing and really messy.
It's
And why
person
it's such a
dependent or
diverse umbrella.
yeah, situation dependent and very personal situation
Yes,
dependent.
and then we also need to think about, you know, intersecting identities as well. So, you know, gender, ethnicity, race, all those things will influence your lived experience as well.
Yeah.
And I only can obviously talk from my lived experience, which is, you know, a white colonizer in North America. And so I can't speak to the experience of, you know, Latina asexuals or, you know, indigenous asexuals. And that obviously in itself is a really important concept to consider, because who do you most often see in media? It's white folks.
White, yeah.
And if you don't have much ace rep to begin with, and all you see is white asexuals in media, how are you going to see yourself in that?
Yeah, such a
and
lack
so
of
many
representation.
Folks, you know, when we consider intersecting identities, and I've talked to a couple folks on the podcast about this, they did not find that ace representation that spoke to them because they're not white. And that doesn't appear in media, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that can be really difficult as a result, to figure out that you might indeed be asexual if you don't see that representation on the screen in what you read.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. There's like not that much representation as it is, but yeah, someone that is black and asexual, indigenous, Latina, like they're not. Yeah, it's not gonna speak to them in the same way. It's such a privilege sometimes to like be where we are, and it is frustrating that there's not a lot, but hopefully in time there are more people that can be talking about it and sharing experiences, and people that can relate to. But yeah, in the media particularly, it's a very white dominated place, which is not great at all. I don't agree with that either. And yeah what's the chat
just looking over my notes on asexuality. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the history of the term and where it kind of evolved from?
Yes. Yeah.
So as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, the first appearances of terms related to asexuality in terms of sexuality were in medical and psychological textbooks. So, you know, for example, in the late 1800s, we have a book, Psychopathia Sexualis, describing anesthesia sexual as somebody with an absence of a sexual feeling. So you can see right there, it's somebody that's pathologized, because how dare they not have a sexual feeling?
Yeah. Jeez.
And so most of the early literature around asexuality was very much in this pathologized context. How do I fix this person? Which is just absolutely wrong. It's
like the whole stuff where they talk about conversion therapy in so many people that is today in some places still seen as something that's wrong with people, and a mental issue or condition or whatever, and it's just absolute BS, by the way. Obviously we both know that, but it's when thinking about historically, it was even worse back then, and so much was pathologized. But I again, I didn't even think too deeply into these terms, which is quite ignorant actually. But the fact that, you know, the community in whatever capacity has existed since the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
It's just more, things are a little bit more, not enough, but a little bit more, how do I, not mainstream at all, but like a little bit more out there to talk about at least. Like if you go and look on the internet, you'll find something, hopefully. But it's only because we have technology, right? And people talking about them and articles online. But back then it was just kind of word of mouth, scary things that, you know, not everyone has experienced. So it's like, oh, that's dismissed because it's not real, or you're not well, or whatever. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said about technology and the sharing of information, and sometimes misinformation as well. A lot of misinformation, but there's a lot to be said about that and how much we see now. And the people that talk about, oh, you know, that's just a trend nowadays or whatever. It's like, no, it's just we share information quicker. We don't wait a couple weeks for a telegram or however long telegrams would take to come. But, you know, you don't send a letter to America and it turns up a month later anymore. So which is what I used to do when I was younger, writing to my pen pals back in the 90s. But like, there's a lot of people that are like, no, this is not real, or this, you know, these people just existing nowadays, like coming out, like that weren't here before, and you're like, no, love, they've been around, they just may not have had a voice where you were or whatever. And that's just one example that you were giving too. So there must be like quite a lot of literature and talking about it being a medical condition. It's bizarre that there was probably such a lack of research into it as well at the time, and that's what they kind of decided on.
And it's still heavily medicalized by the medical profession. Like I mentioned a couple of years ago, you know, in the context of a doctor asking, are you sexually active? I said, no, I'm ace. And so what did I have in my report? Sexual impotence.
Without them even delving deeper into...
No.
What? Wow.
So it's still heavily pathologized.
That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Were you able to challenge that, or?
I didn't challenge the doctor directly. I think I asked to put a complaint in around that doctor. But I don't know if it ended up going anywhere. I didn't really feel comfortable dealing with it. I kind of just let it slide, to be honest.
Yeah, why would you? I think another thing to be said about these issues or these things that can happen is we get very tired very quickly with any dismissing things that people have said or done. And I think, trying to fight for your medical rights, trying to fight for anything, for people to understand, and the very people that you would hope should understand or have done research, that's absolutely bizarre that they're putting it down to impotence when you have little to no sexual attraction. Wow. So and I know that there is misinformation still out there, but like that's kind of, whilst I'm not surprised on one hand, I am quite surprised that that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you familiar with the ace activist in the UK, Yasmin Benoit?
I've heard the name, but I'm not sure what.
She's absolutely amazing and has done some really great work for the ace community in the UK in particular, but also comes to all sorts of prides here in North America.
Okay.
She helped pen the report, Ace in the UK, and really delves into the just the amount of erasure and pathologization that asexuality still experiences in the UK to this day.
Right.
And
I will have to.
the fact that, you know, asexuals experience, you know, really high degrees of sexual conversion therapy. It's not recognized as being part of the queer community by the UK government. Like aces don't have rights under that legislation.
I didn't even realize that. That's ridiculous.
And it's really interesting here in Canada as well, because if you read a lot of the government documentation around the queer community, it's 2S, two-spirit, LGBTQIA, or sorry, the I+. They purposely leave the A out. A is not even listed. It's I, and then it stops. They don't include the A for asexuality or aromanticism.
Again, just ridiculous, bizarre behaviour. Jeez. Talk about like erasure of a minority, or just erasing or silencing, and it is very frustrating that has been the case, and it still is in many places. It's awful. And it's Yasmin Benoit, did you say? I'm sure
yeah, I'll
I've
type
heard
it out
the
in the
name.
chat.
Yeah.
She's absolutely fantastic.
I'll have to look up her work as well and see what that encompasses. Okay, cool. See, even these I'm already learning a lot, and I didn't expect to learn so much of the, like, well, we have been here for a little while, but and then what was the next thing you were talking about? You were talking about the history of things.
Yeah, so if we think about asexuality as a sexual orientation, it really wasn't until the late 60s and early 70s that we first see, you know, asexuality appearing even within the queer community as a sexual orientation. That's not that long ago.
It's not.
To have it first appear kind of in, you know, pride festivals as a sexual orientation. The 1960s, 1970s wasn't even, you know, on the radar.
That's just one generation. Like, that's my mother's generation. That's mad.
And the first time it kind of appears online, I think, is the late 1990s. Oh. And a blog by Zoe O'Reilly on my life as an amoeba. So, you know, making the tongue-in-cheek connection to the fact that amoebas are asexual, they reproduce asexually. She came up with the title, My Life as basically an amoeba, and it describes her experience coming out as ace to friends and family. And this was in 1997, not all that long ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's
and kind of building on this, a Yahoo group appeared in 2000, Haven for the Human Amoeba, a reference to that blog. This is just in the last 25 years.
Yeah. Jeez. Like, it's great that things have been visible, but not enough.
Yeah.
Obviously not enough. Talking about the 60s and the 90s and then the 2000s. That's really wild. That is really wild.
Absolutely.
Spebby, you're more than welcome to share, by the way. Everyone
absolutely. That's why we're here. Exactly. Don't apologize.
Bad. Yeah. And
Kaber's also great. We just chatted with Kaber actually on Friday on the podcast.
Oh, that was the one that you did this week. Nice. It didn't exist. People act like because we didn't have the language for asexuality didn't exist until recently, as if it's so strange that some people just wouldn't want to be intimate or romantic.
Exactly.
Wild. People just, there's a lot of the fact that because people haven't lived it themselves, which is a whole vast array of things. There's so many things that you can't live in the experience of if you have your own unique experience of life. But so many people kind of dismiss it because they haven't been there themselves. It's really strange. Like, of course, I'm not going to dismiss a black lesbian's life experience just because I haven't lived as a black lesbian. Like, how hard is that to understand? Very strange. But also, I think just the difference is I would never invalidate that or dismiss it or act like it's not real. I would take the time to kind of learn about it and see examples. And I just don't understand the ignorant mindset to just not give that a chance and have a bit more of an open mind and all of that. Like, people are just very strange. But it's
there's
not
a
fair.
book by Sharonda J. Brown. I would say it's a little bit more academic than it is a light read, but it's called Refusing Compulsory Sexuality, a Black Asexual Lens on Our Sex-Obsessed Culture. And in it, Sharonda J. Brown delves into how compulsory sexuality, the idea that everybody is sexually attracted and therefore must desire to be in a sexual relationship, and then because of that, all media, all the advertisements, society is just bombarding you with
that ideology,
sex from left, right, and center. And they talk about the fact that this is actually used as a tool of oppression in so many ways, in that, if you can't experience sexual attraction, basically you're invalid as a person. What's your worth if you're not able to reproduce, or you don't? And so it's used as a tool of oppression. Great read, but it's a very dense read. So it's not a 101 level book. So I would caution, if you're not familiar with the terms, maybe this is not the best book to read as like your first introduction to asexuality. But if you really want to delve into the erasure behind it, this is a great resource.
Okay. Well, that's on my list, and
I'll type that in the chat. If you just look up "Refusing
Compulsory Sexuality."
Compulsory Sexuality.
I've got that as well. Sharonda J. Brown.
It's by Sharonda J. Brown.
Nice. Sharonda. Definitely spelt that wrong. Sharonda.
Absolutely. These are the books that really interest me. I just actually ordered a book that just came out yesterday or on Friday, I guess, from the UK, talking about how aces and arrows are redefining and reimagining the terms love, life, and family. And it just came out on Friday, so I ordered that. I'm really excited to read that.
Yeah.
I can pop that in the chat as well.
Yeah, go for it. Definitely good to read more and to listen more and find out more about stuff that's now thankfully entering the media and literature, the world of literature. That's good because there probably isn't a lot out there.
No.
Even.
And also, a lot of these books are not well known outside the Ace and Arrow community.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's another reason to be doing this.
So, one of the organizations that really, I guess, started putting asexuality on the radar of most folks is the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, which first kind of appeared out of the ashes of the Yahoo group. Even appears kind of in 2001. and was started by David J. And they've worked to really make, create spaces for, it began as a forum. So there were kind of spaces where you could log on and talk about your lived experiences. But they've also done some great work to promote, ACE content. Like I see Avon reposting a lot of my going live tweets for
Oh, cool.
the podcast, which I think is absolutely amazing because I'm just a small little content creator.
No,
but they do a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you're doing some really, really important work, and it's great to like boost anything that is helping in all of this. So rightly so, they should, everyone that is trying to share these kind of things, you are fully deserving of that regardless. So that is really good, and I hope it really like continues to be successful. Like I think it's amazing, even now that you've got so many different subjects that you've explored. You've not just got one or two videos up there. There's like quite a few when I was looking through it. So I was like, that's a whole lot of knowledge. Now. 23. That's fantastic, and really like it's so useful for people like me who are not as clued up on a lot of things. But also with the ADHD, like I will speed run some research and knowledge quite often, and that is like an absolute great resource for me because I can just put it on and just listen and really like take note of what's being said and think twice about just a lot of different things, I guess. These things are very, very, very useful to have out there. So hopefully you're able to keep doing what you do, obviously within capacity. I would never encourage someone to like do it if it was trouble, but yeah, it's absolutely great, and you should be proud of all of that and the vast amount of knowledge that you're gaining as well, I guess, from talking to people.
I learn a lot from folks I speak with on the podcast, and that's really why I do it. I want to see how these intersecting identities influence and can kind of shape one's lived experience under asexuality and aromanticism. Because I can talk about my experience, but it's just one of many ACE experiences, one of many aro experiences. It's not the ACE, it's not the aro experience.
The defining one type, one thing, for sure. That's cool. All right, what else have you got in your notes? Because this is fantastic. This is really cool. It's
so
hard,
we've kind of
to like
focused mostly on asexuality for now. I would say that aromanticism is even less well understood in the community and in society more broadly. The closest equivalent to Avon for aromantics, it's called Aurea, AUREA. I think it stands for the Aromantic Union. I have it in my notes here.
It's somewhere.
Basically, I think Aurea didn't come into existence until the mid-2000s. I think, 2015, 2016, it first appears, and it didn't gain not-for-profit status until last year.
Oh, wow.
So Aurea just became a 501c not-for-profit as of last year.
Damn.
Not very long ago.
Not very long ago at all.
And so this will give it more ability to do some of the outreach that Avon's been able to do. But because of that, because there hasn't been these organizations around for all that long, there's just not much out there for society to really learn about aromanticism. And unfortunately, it means that there's a lot of misunderstandings of what aromanticism actually is.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Which
you've
is what
got these really problematic representations of, you know, aromantic characters in the media, if they exist at all, as being cold, devoid of emotion, and antisocial monsters.
Mm.
That's not at all
That's not what I would.
what an aromantic lived experience is.
No.
While there are some folks who are aromantic that may be aplatonic and not feel platonic attraction, that is a small subset of aromanticism.
Mm-hmm.
Most aro folks live for those platonic and
Right.
even quasi or queer platonic, which we can talk about later, partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
They just look different from the relationships that you would typically associate with the term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I live for the platonic friendships I have in my life, the communities that I've developed around me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what keeps me going every day.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be more than that, does it?
Yeah.
For some, and I definitely heard people talking about that and using examples of people that just don't feel deep emotions for people or care about people. It's that whole misconception of that people don't care, but it's not. Yeah, again, it's not the case. It's just that they experience things differently to what society norms would suggest, which normal is not normal anyway. The constant reiteration that normal is not. It's just completely subjective. But
yeah, exactly.
It looks different for everyone, and like you say, it's a different lived experience for everyone. Yeah, I'd really love to hear more about that as well, the aromanticism.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuff. So I think it might be helpful to maybe talk a little bit about the history of the term aromanticism and where it kind of evolved from.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the late 1970s, Dorothy Tenov writes a book called Love and Limerence, The Experience of Being in Love. And in it, she speaks of limerent and non-limerent folks, with limerence being a term that at the time referred to something close to romantic love. Mm-hmm. And so if you're non-limerent, you don't experience this limerence. And this is kind of the first time we have this notion in the literature that I'm aware of where this separation of romantic and non-romantic I guess
feeling or
experiences might exist. Mm-hmm. But this is limerence. The term in that book was limerence. Mm-hmm. And it isn't until we see the arrival of AVEN, so this is the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, that the term aromantic starts to appear. And this is in the 2000s. So before that, there hasn't really been any discussion of aromantic as a term. And so in 2003, AVEN asked about what are folks' orientations under the asexual umbrella. And in it, they listed straight asexual, so somebody that's heteroromantic, the gay asexual, somebody that's homoromantic, bi-asexual, somebody that's experiences romantic attraction to more than one gender. Mm-hmm. And then they list this term asexual. Okay. So that was how they described aromantic or aro-ace, what we now call as aro-ace or aromantic asexual was called asexual at the time. So there wasn't even the term for aromantic.
Yeah,
in the early
it
2000s.
It was just kind of, we'll just duplicate that one or duplicate the word. It feels very afterthoughty. Yeah, we'll just shove that on there. Wild.
Yeah, and so somebody in the comments writes, maybe aromantic might be a better descriptor for this.
Yeah, yeah.
But this isn't
Interesting.
until like
So that was
2006
right.
that somebody kind of mentions this.
2006
And
then.
that's not very long ago.
No. And Dorothy's book, you said that was in the 70s, right? But that was
Yeah.
the limerent and non-limerent.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah. Wow. 2003, 2006. It's wild that these terms. Well, it's great that there are names for certain things, and of course I'm sure some things could be fluid or not quite, you know, like you say, there are so many different areas that someone might fall under or identify with.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, it's sometimes it's nice to kind of realize what fits. So for so many people that they didn't have that until more recently, and some people might still be, there's a whole journey that everyone goes through. I know even I have in my own identity, sexuality and everything, where it takes a long time to figure out what is the appropriate label if you want to label yourself. And we were talking yesterday about how sometimes labels are quite important, because the other labels you may have been given in the past feel really wrong and not applicable. So having something to identify with and relate to is really useful.
And if there isn't the language out there to explain your experience, how are you going to find community? How are you going to find others with shared lived experience?
Yeah.
And because of this, I certainly didn't have any language for, you know, asexuality or aromanticism growing up. I had not met anybody who was openly out as ace or aro.
Yeah.
So I didn't come to realize my own identity until I approached 30.
Yeah.
And there's so many ace and aro folks that I've talked to that figure it out, you know, much later in life.
Yeah. Even if you came into contact with people that were, they wouldn't have known what the terms were or wouldn't have been. I mean, I guess there's a lot of like, I don't know how to describe who I am, or I don't. There was no way to know that you related to somebody in that way because it just wasn't out there. So yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense too. Yeah, I can imagine there's like, for some there might be some grief in like growing up and not being able to explain easily, you know, this is me, this is who I am, because so many people just be like, even if you tried to explain, there's that, it's not straightforward, and I can imagine either people just didn't get it or you just don't have a way of saying it even. So yeah, I can imagine there's like quite some grief in just, I wish I knew, I wish I had answers back then.
You know, this really speaks to, you know, asexuality being an invisible orientation. It's not really well known, you know, in society. There's a lot of erasure, and I always joke, but I'm also half not joking when I say, how do I find an ace person in the wild? Unless you've got an ace flag on your bag, or you tell me you're ace, how am I going to know that you're ace?
Yeah.
And it can be really hard to find community as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. It's great that there is the internet, but like you say, in the wild, that's a whole other world that you literally would need to like have a big label in your head, and people don't go around doing that with anything. Exactly. So yeah,
I am so fortunate in that locally we've got, you know, the Ace and Arrow discussion group that I help run, and I'm also a part of 2 different Ace and Arrow organizations in the Toronto region.
Right.
And I, you know, will interact with them, you know, when I go visit Toronto every so often.
That's
and
really
then back
useful.
from where I am originally, I made connections with another Ace and Arrow group. So I am so blessed in that I have like 4 or 5 different Ace and Arrow organizations that I'm a part of. Most people I know are part of 0.
Yeah.
They're
I
dying for some sort of ace and arrow group.
yeah, I couldn't tell you any local groups to me. I could probably have a look, and there probably wouldn't be that many, if at all. But and I'm not even searching for that myself.
Yeah.
But for others, like there aren't many known. There are a couple of local trans groups that I know of. So there are things out there for people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
But again, and that's something
It's
I'm
hard to get
aware
them
of.
publicized.
Yeah. And so
Most
that
ace and
quite
arrow
difficult.
groups are open to folks who might be questioning. Absolutely, that's the whole part of it. If you feel that term, the way that pretty much every ace and arrow group I know operates is, if you feel like that label fits, or you're questioning if it fits for you, you're welcome to join.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Because that's really what it's about. If that label works, then you're ace, then you're aromantic. That's all that matters.
Pseudo, is it
Pseudo-suga. So that's
Pseudo-suga.
actually we were having a discussion in chat the other day. So pseudo-suga is the Latin term for Douglas fir.
Okay.
It means, so pseudo being false and suga being fir. It's like false fir. And a Douglas fir is, it's a species, a coniferous tree that people call a fir, but it's not actually part of the fir community or the fir species.
Right.
So that's where the name comes from.
That's very cool. That is really cool. Actually, I like
I'm a biogeographer and a climatologist by background, so that's how I knew that one.
I remember you saying, when I first met you, you were talking about what you do. And I was like, wow, that's even really cool. To like, just seeing what people do for work, or for their research around work. Like, you don't meet many people that study climate, or if that's an appropriate way to say it.
Yeah.
And it's something that is so important now as well. Like, you're doing a lot of important things for the world and for the community, communities, should I say? But yeah, climate stuff is that's a whole other subject, honestly.
Yes, absolutely.
But that is it's really super interesting, and I remember you saying that, and I was like, oh my god, I have so many other questions, but we'll put that to the side, because we'll be here all day, all night, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But going back to, I found out what the aurea, so for aromantic spectrum union for recognition, education, and advocacy.
So that's the closest thing we have to AVEN for aromantics, basically.
Right. And that's the only real big one out there.
That's the only global organization I know of. And
Right.
if you look under their resources, they have a very incomplete list of ace and arrow groups. Obviously, with Aurea, they're arrow groups, but many of them are for both aces and arrows.
Right.
But if you look at that list, there's not many on there. And it's certainly not all the ace and arrow organizations that I know of.
Right.
Here in Canada. So it's very hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a few listed, but really hard to find.
That's interesting. It's a shame, it really is. Hopefully there is, over time, hopefully there are more resources globally anyway, more organisations. But yeah, it's such a wild thing that some of these have only been around in the last 20 years. Around that amount of time, that's just, I don't know. I can completely understand, like, the older generation, for those that may have never even known, or may never have had terms to use. It's just a shame, isn't it? It's just that whole not having the things there that could have maybe helped people and can now help people, but yeah, people weren't around for that. So yeah. Anyway.
So we were kind of talking about how does one spot an ace or arrow in the wild. So Pseudo-Suga mentioned the ace and arrow rings. So if you have a black ring on the middle right finger, that is a way to spot an ace in the wild. It's known as the ace ring.
Okay.
And if you have a white ring on your left middle finger, which obviously developed as a kind of a parallel to the ace ring, it's the arrow ring. So a white ring on your left middle finger, your arrow. Black ring on your middle right finger, your ace.
Okay.
The wild part is if you wear a black ring on any other finger, you're a swinger, apparently.
I have black rings, but I don't wear them too often. But I guess, is it just like a plain black ring?
Plain black ring.
Which was, I do.
Sometimes people will wear like an ace colored ring as well, but the original ace ring was a plain black ring on your right middle finger.
Right. Oh wow. I'm neither of those things, but but it also, it's fine. I don't mind people mistaking me. But I guess for those looking out for people, at least it's a sign, a potential sign, and then hopefully that the person is wearing them correctly and it.
Yeah.
Because even that, there's like, oh, they could be, but
but it doesn't necessarily mean.
Yeah.
But if I see a black ring on a middle finger, I'm more likely to go up to the person and be like, "Is that what I think it is?"
Yeah.
And usually they'll know what I'm talking about.
For sure. And if they don't, then
I know they're not.
Yeah. You still have to ask. Yeah. So that's that. But that's definitely a good thing to know and learn as well. I know people wear like wristbands for certain things and rings for certain things. So but then not everyone may know that either. No.
I know many aces and arrows that don't know the ace and arrow rings.
Ah. That'd be cool to share as like this is what we learned today. You say, I recognise now I had gender dysphoria when I was 8. Back then I just thought boys were always sad about their bodies. Oh, because you felt that way back then? There's a lot of things people say. I get very... I see lots of things happening. I always want to read everything and acknowledge everything. I really appreciate everyone sharing these things as well. I had no idea jewellery types can alert each other to certain things. Yeah, and Suda, you said it's how I found the only other ace you've met in the wild. 1.
Yeah.
1 is better than 0.
Yeah.
But yes, it's not a lot, is it? There's not a big number at all.
No, absolutely not.
Gosh. All right. And then where were we with? We were talking about the history. We were talking about signs out in the wild, and then being a huge lack of global resources and organisations.
And then you go to pride festivals, and how many, flags do you see?
Yeah, you don't see.
Not many, historically.
No.
I mean, Ace flag only came out in the early 2000s, and the Arrow flag only came out in 2014. So there wasn't that visible representation.
It was
2014 is when the Arrow flag first appeared.
And the Arrow, so do you say Arrow or do you say Arrow? I always get it.
I say Arrow because it's Aromanticism.
Yeah.
But that's just my accent, probably.
No, that's right, because I always want to make sure I'm saying the right thing as well. But the Aromanticism flag, I couldn't even tell you what colours that looks like, but I remember seeing one, and like you say, it was very recent, and I was like, oh, what's that? And had to Google it. So
I mean, I have all three of the A-spec flags if you'd like me to show you them.
yeah, yeah, of course. Very cool.
I brought them with me to Pride yesterday because I have to be usually the only Aero Ace person wearing an Aero Ace flag with me.
Right.
So we'll start with the Ace flag. Oh, that's my non-binary flag. Sorry, wrong one. So the Ace flag is purple, white, gray, black.
I do see the Ace flag a lot, and that's cool. That is a good thing.
The Aero flag has some similarities, except the difference is that it's 5 stripes.
Right.
And it's green, light green, gray, black. And the Ace flag starts with black on top, but the Aero flag starts with green
on
top.
Okay. Yes. I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, okay. Is it 2014?
And then the one that there's almost no Pride representation of is the Aero Ace flag. Which is so pretty.
Yeah,
it looks like a sunset.
I have only seen this flag maybe once before now, like a public event, and it was probably last year at Brighton Pride, perhaps. And I didn't know what that was either. I don't think I've seen it since. And yeah, you've just showed. That's probably the second time I've ever seen that flag. That's wild.
So funny you mentioned that, Phoebe. I've had a couple people ask me what country is the Ace flag. Like legit, like for real. And I'm just looking at them like.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I guess flags can be for countries, but there are so many now that we can use for identifying with things. Oh, the cat is. Oh, she's awake. No, she's going back to sleep. Yeah. Knowing that people get them confused is quite fun, in a way. Very cool though.
Yeah, so I really love they call that the sunset Aero Ace flag.
Yeah, it does look like a sunset.
Because there's also the combination flag that some people will use, where they basically take the Ace and Aero colors and join them together.
Right.
Which some people use as an alternative Aero Ace flag, but I much prefer the sunset colors because they're so pretty.
They look good, yeah. Yeah, it's a nice one. Oh, that's cool. The mighty country of A-spec.
Hell yeah.
Very cool. Would move there in a heartbeat. Brilliant. At least that would be, finding others in the wild would be, you would hope, a lot easier. At least a lot easier. I wouldn't want to assume.
So I try to be that one or two people at the Pride festivals wearing the Aero or the Aero Ace flag, because I want to have people come up to me and be like, what is that flag? And I'll be like, well, let me tell you. I've taught several people over the years at our local Pride festival about asexuality and aromanticism, just purely because I was wearing that flag.
That's cool. And then there's the others really, that might recognize it and say, oh my god, one of us, or
exactly. When I started going to the Toronto Pride parade a few years back, I maybe saw, and this is a massive Pride parade, like there's hundreds of thousands of people that turn out to it.
Wow.
And I would maybe see just a few Aero flags here and there, more Ace flags, but hardly any. And then last year I saw so many more arrow flags in the
Oh,
crowd,
that's good.
and it warmed my heart.
That's it's
Because,
that.
as people start to see that flag, they're like, wow, I feel more seen, and I think
Yeah,
they're more
yeah,
likely to bring their own arrow flag as a result. And so
for sure.
usually at any pride festival I go to, I try to be that one person, if any, that's wearing an arrow flag or the arrow ace flag,
Yeah,
just so people have that visible representation there.
absolutely. It's so important, and that is really cool. And the fact that you saw an influx of more of them around, just there's that feeling that you must get, that's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is good. This is good. There's more out there. Yeah, for sure. It's that whole not feeling so alone, and knowing that you're not alone, because visibly there is evidence of that.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
the fact that you grew up without any of that, is frustrating, I'm sure. It's a shame, but I'm glad that there is more of that, and it's more of a thing that you're seeing. Yeah, very good, very good. I'll keep an eye out to see how many more I see this year as well, and how many I might recognise now that I'm a bit more of a flag connoisseur. No, I'm not. I like to try and I'd probably want to have a little refresh, because there are some that I get wrong anyway, and the same with countries. I'll look at something, I'll get that completely wrong, but it would be nice to brush up and remind myself of what represents what, because that's quite important. But
Absolutely. And then
it's nice to know, because when you're asked, and you can be like, oh, that's that flag. I have a lot of friends that aren't in the community, but that come to community events, or some will come to Pride with me. My twin sister, for example, will come with, and she might not be as knowledgeable about certain things. So it's always nice to be like, oh, hey, I can tell you about this, or I can tell you about that. Is always good. Always good to be a bit knowledgeable about something.
Absolutely. And then the demi flag has the same colors, but it's got
a different way around.
Yeah, it's got the green line if it's arrow, and it's got the purple line if it's ace, and then there's kind of like a black triangle, and it's white.
Right.
So
yeah, I've seen that.
Same colors, but in a different configuration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a demisexual flag and there's a demi-romantic, and they look almost the same, except demisexuals with a purple line and demi-romantics with a green line.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sexuals purple, green.
And then there's all sorts of other flags for the different micro labels, and I don't know all of them, that's for sure.
There's a whole range, but that's interesting.
Those are kind of the main ones, the most recognizable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I'll be keeping my eyes open for more of those that I see out in the wild as well, because that would be nice. Okay, Chat, are you learning a lot here? Are you hearing a lot of things that you can relate to, maybe, or things that you're kind of nodding along with, or hearing new things? It's always nice to see that people are maybe learning something new, or just feeling comfy in a place where they can listen in. Learn a bit about yourself, Ad. That's really, really cool.
I'm so glad. I've had several people tell me after watching the podcast that they came to realize that they may be ace or arrow themselves, and they had no idea before.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why having this, visible representation, having these sorts of discussions is so important.
Yeah. Ad, you were asking as well, is there a book you recommend on someone who's starting to question? So I don't expect you to know this title. Oh, hello. No, you can't. Oh, my cat wants to go.
I just saw the little pause.
She wants me to let her out. I'm going to quickly let her out. But Ad was asking, could there be a book to recommend for someone starting to question? And whilst you may not know, obviously the internet is a great place, but you might be knowledgeable on books and
Books
stuff
on
like
like
that. But
asexuality and aromanticism.
it's more about starting to question or finding out more as a person that's just kind of finding out about themselves. I'm guessing.
So there are definitely a few books I can recommend if you're questioning, you know, asexuality or you're questioning aromanticism.
Oh,
There's some great
amazing.
resources on that.
And yeah,
So
that's what Anne says.
one of the ones I like to recommend, kind of as a, here are a bunch of different examples of asexuality, would be Angela Chen's Ace. So Ace by Angela Chen is a great one, and it really talks about kind of different experiences from different narrators on their ace experiences. Great kind of like intro overview to kind of some of the experiences that folks may have experienced under the asexual umbrella. Yeah, Ace by Angela Chen. There's a couple of books, and these are like really like 101 level, like, you know, just coming to grips with asexuality and aromanticism. Are you familiar with the TikToker and YouTuber who goes by the moniker Ace Dad Advice?
No, not yet.
AKA Cody Diagonal Orients.
Okay.
Great. They've got some great content on TikTok and YouTube, but they've also written a couple of books recently, and these are like some really great intro level stuff.
Okay. That'd be someone useful to follow as well. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
just grab those books. I really should have a command in my chat because talk about
you have
so
the I just appreciate that you have these resources that you can share as well, and this knowledge, because the question, I never expect you to know everything, which is why I kind of prefaced it with you might not know, but that's incredible, even just being able to share some information like that to someone from the community. I'm really pleased that that's useful knowledge to pass on.
So I Am Ace by Cody Diagonal Orients, and that's Ace Dad Advice's real name. They recently came out as agender, actually.
Right. Very cool.
Which actually there's a lot of overlap between Ace Arrow and agender people.
Logically, that can make some sense.
Folks who are asexual, aromantic, and agender are sometimes referred to as AAA batteries in the community.
I was going to say, I wonder if there's some sort of AAA thing there.
AAA battery is the Arrow Ace agender person. I know a few.
Okay, that's very cool. God, that is cool. And
there's also the Ace and Arrow relationship guide as well. By Cody Diagonal Orients. I think that one just came out last year.
Right. Oh, Ad, you said I didn't know about aromanticism and demisexuality. Okay. All right. Yeah, there'll be a lot more.
And then demi-romanticism is like demisexuality, except it's talking about one's romantic attraction only appearing once they've gotten to develop a close emotional bond with someone.
Yeah. Very cool.
So there's a lot of micro labels where you can change the word sexual to romantic, and there's often always a arrow equivalent of that. Not always, but often.
Yeah, from definitely some of what we've heard today as well. Very cool. All right. And then where else can we go with your notes? Because this is super useful.
So we could talk about media representation. One thing I do want to talk about is a relationship structure that many folks in the ace and arrow community often talk about, or you may have heard of before, but may not be aware what it is.
Right.
And this is it's called a quasi or queer platonic relationship.
I know you mentioned that earlier, and I have heard people use quasi, or I've read it and I thought it was quasi.
Yeah.
But I have
It's also-
absolutely no clue.
Absolutely.
What it's
So
about,
this is kind of it's a relationship style that often appears in ace and arrow communities, and the reason it's queer is not because it's necessarily between two folks that are in the queer community, but it's the relationship itself that's queered or different.
Right.
And so a quasi or queer platonic relationship is a relationship that has no formal rule set, but is neither purely platonic or purely romantic in nature.
Okay.
I like to call it the choose your own adventure relationship, because that's really what it is.
That's a great way to describe it. Okay. Choose your
So
own
they
adventure.
typically involve a greater degree of emotional closeness than like a
Right.
typical Western platonic friendship would be.
Like
And
a
so that's
stronger
big part.
bond
There's a stronger
Or-
bond.
emotionally.
Sometimes folks will refer to them as their emergency contact person. You might live in the same household as them. You may not, but there's usually a closer emotional bond than typically associated with a traditional platonic friendship.
Okay.
But there's also no one way to have a QPR,
Mm-hmm.
because it's this gray area between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's interesting.
that is something theoretically I would like in the future.
Yeah.
I'm not seeking one out because I wouldn't know how to begin, and at the moment I'm okay, with the communities I have. But theoretically, having somebody that's I've got a little bit more emotional closeness with, that would be lovely. I just don't want the romantic or sexual aspects that usually come along with the typical, I call the capital R relationship that everybody talks about.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Absolutely. People who aren't ace or arrow can also be in a QPR, and they may be in one and not know the term.
I was actually going to ask
They just
that.
happen
Is
to be
that
more
something?
common in ace and arrow communities.
Okay.
Theoretically, you could have two folks that are cis-het that are in a QPR, but they may not know it. Your best friend
Interesting.
forever could be a QPR.
Mm-hmm.
Your BFF might be a QPR,
Mm-hmm.
but you might not have the language for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, hiding in plain sight. That's cool. Bunch of people in queer platonic relationships. They do a lot of relationships like without the kissing or the sex parts. I guess that's the part of the route that you can go down, depending on your chosen adventure.
That's not going to show up in the shared chat, but I'm going to
Oh,
type it in my
Copy
chat and see if it does. But there's a
see what
video,
pops up.
RA video. Let's see if this comes up.
Oh
Did
yeah,
that
it
come up
does.
in the shared chat?
Yeah, it does.
If you want to learn more about QPRs and how they overlap with polyamory and another term, relationship anarchy, highly, highly recommend this video
Oh,
by Megan Sandor, who's actually done a doctorate in kind of this area of research.
okay. I've got that up in a window already, so that I can have a look at that after stream. Because that's very cool.
Not
And
necessarily. So not necessarily a mate's night, but it's really about the emotional closeness that you have with that person.
so a much
So it's
stronger
somebody that
bond than just a
You've
mate.
got a stronger
kind of-
bond with typically than a traditional platonic friendship.
Mhm.
Some folks might live with their QPR. They may share financial responsibilities with their QPR, but everybody's QPR is going to be a little bit different.
Ah. And then that's a good subject to talk about. Are they really the same thing? Because I'm sure they're probably not. Likely not. And Megan would be someone that kind of talks about this kind of thing a lot, or lots of different things. Okay, I'm just looking at their YouTube as well and seeing that there are different subjects they've talked about. So yeah, I also don't want this to come out. Oh no, I think I've muted the tab, so that's good. All right, so that's interesting.
And so many folks that are in the Ace and Arrow community may also find aspects of relationship anarchy, which Megan Sandor talks about, as a useful concept, because relationship anarchy really is just a relationship style that challenges the societal norms around what a relationship looks like.
I was going to
So if you're
say,
Ace
is it
or
like
Arrow, you're already saying, hey, my relationship is not going to look like yours.
Mm-hmm.
So having some sort of, structure where you can sort of say, hey, like, let's talk about this in a more structured framework, I think speaks to a lot of folks in the Ace and Arrow community. I know it does for me.
Yeah, kind of saying like, mine's not your typical capital R relationship, but here's what it might look like, rather than just not anything to go by. I suppose that's
absolutely nobody should be erasing anybody's lived experience.
No, was that they were roommates, or
so and they were roommates. Unfortunately, there's a lot of jokes about that, unfortunately.
That's
and it creates erasure, because they very well might be in a QPR. They could also be in a completely different relationship, but that seems to be a common refrain.
Okay.
And also there's, I know that some of the books that I've recommended talk about this, but a lot of people who we've maybe in history theorized may have been gay or lesbian could very well have been asexual, but that almost never comes up in the discussion.
Right. And I guess because there wasn't as much knowledge being shared back then that even they weren't aware. But
it's, historically, if somebody's not in a relationship that looks straight passing, well, they must be gay then, is what historically people have said.
Right. That's the kind of knee-jerk assumption that not everyone makes, but that history will tell, I guess. Or yeah.
So that's another interesting to think about, is, are there folks, and I don't think anybody should ever assign somebody a label. That's not right, because you don't know their lived experience.
Yep.
But it is a sort of interesting to think about that some of the folks that we may have theorized as being gay or lesbian may very well have been something else, and we don't necessarily think about that.
Yeah, we don't know them personally. We only have a certain limited resource to people of the past, right? So
exactly.
There's a lot of things that people would have kept private. Certainly in a world where there were a lot of things that were taboo because people were discriminated against, or even worse, hurt for it, or attacked in so many different ways. So there was a lot of stuff that was probably not so common knowledge or shared for fear of the consequences, which is also just such a shame. I mean, the fact that same-sex marriage was not even a thing until very recently, and even that's not allowed in certain places. Like, we really are so far behind where we should be in so many areas. But Yeah, that's a good point. There are certain. I talk about this with neurodivergence even, and
Yeah.
things that there are so many assumptions about people without realizing like there might be context to it that we haven't been given, and things like someone that's creepy may not actually be creepy. They just may have a slightly different brain and process things differently, and need to do things in a certain way. Or myself, I apparently I don't give a lot of eye contact when it's someone that I don't know very well, and I only realized that like very recently. I'll look at my partner, I'll look at my sister, my people in my family most of the time, I think, but meeting up with a fellow creator, it was witnessed that I just was not looking directly at them, and I didn't know that, but people might see that as weird, or what's going on, without any context that maybe it's my autism, or maybe it's something else, but and that's not anything to do with what you're talking about in the same way. But it's like there are things that we don't have all the context for, and we only know certain things, so it's not a true picture of things either.
And that's why having this discussion around, intersecting identities is so important, because your lived experience is shaped by all sorts of different things, not just sexual orientation, not just romantic orientation.
Yeah.
And your life as an ace person, as an arrow person, is going to look different because of that.
Yeah, really important to remember.
I'm wanting to kind of respond to what Pseudo Suga and Faber were talking about. So there's a lot of folks in the ace community that I know that initially came out as bi or pan, as Faber mentioned.
Right.
Because to them, they had no difference in the way that they experienced attraction to any gender. But for them, it turns out it was because they had no sexual attraction to any gender.
Right.
But if you don't know what sexual attraction is, I can very well see why you might think that you are bi or pan as a result. So,
for sure.
It's a very common kind of, I think, experience for many ace folks that they initially come out as bi or pan, because that's the frame of reference that they have. And then later in life, they come to realize that maybe I'm not. Maybe the fact that my experience or attraction to all genders is the same because I don't have any sexual or romantic feelings for anybody.
Yeah, that's I didn't even consider that either, but and this what Caberhook was saying about the a mutual understanding of erasure and being treated like
and also real. The fact that people really erase the bi, the pan, the ace, the arrow experience as not being real.
That's a shame. Can see that too. Yeah, it's wild that many people experience that as in the community, but I'm glad that you were able to know more, learn more. But it's a long road learning about yourself, and when there are less things out there to give you a more clear answer, or like, oh yeah, that's more me than this. It's you could be believing something for a while before you get there. So it's really interesting to talk about. But these are people's real lives, like for me to say that, I hope that doesn't take away the seriousness of it, because that's people's real lives, and it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But very useful, and I guess it can help a lot of people be mindful of that. Yeah. My head is full to the brim of info. But I like that. I really do like to learn and hear about things that I might not necessarily have thought about before,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
even made the connection. And I sound like a broken record already by saying that, but it really is. It's helping me to understand. Also, if I say anything that comes across as wrong or incorrect, please let me know, because I never want to say the wrong things, and I will always take accountability of with that, and I won't become the victim or whatever. You know, some people are like, react in a weird way that acts like they're the victim. I would never. I'm in a very fortunate position of privilege, I guess, and I just wouldn't want to take that from somebody. So yeah, if even anyone in chat, if you hear me say something that's not quite right, please feel free to correct me, because I'm happy to be corrected. But yeah, gosh, where to now?
Media
Media representation, yeah.
So the book I was telling about earlier, Sharonda J. Brown's Refusing Compulsory Sexuality, has a whole entire chapter dedicated to the problematic depiction of asexuality in media.
Right.
And they go into some great detail on why and how it's been portrayed the way it has. And, you know, just to kind of summarize some of these things. If you think back to kind of early representations of asexuality in media, you know, like in Ian Fleming's James Bond, for example, a number of the villains are coded as asexual, because if you're ace, well, you must have no feelings for anyone or care about anyone.
Right.
So you must be a
You're
villain,
just
right?
An evil villain.
Yeah.
See.
If you're ace, you're evil, according to you know, these early media depictions, or you're a robot.
Right.
So like Rosa Klebb from Russia in Love, Auric Goldfinger from the Goldfinger movie, all evil villains, and they're coded as asexual, because how can anybody who doesn't have sexual attraction to someone be a valid and caring person? That's how it comes across in the media. Or you get the characters like Sherlock Holmes, which I don't think anybody's ever canonically said that Sherlock Holmes is ace. Most people read the character as that.
Right.
So, you know, people might read Sherlock Holmes as a sex-averse aro ace who's married to his work and doesn't want to do anything else, because all he cares about is his work.
Right.
And the representations are often very one-dimensional. That's the only thing we know about the character, is their ace.
I was going to say
there's token ace character.
There's no deeper context.
No.
At all.
They're often minor characters, and the only thing we know about them are that they're ace, or that they're aro, and there's nothing that goes beyond that. And there's usually only one of them.
Right.
The token queer character.
Even there's not a lot that you've even suggested just there, but the fact that some can be incorrect, but also that some are not even delving into where they fall.
Yeah.
Or any deeper knowledge that's interesting. Not feeling or understanding emotions and missing something, depictions. It's very.
No, I haven't taken it across. I haven't taken it as inappropriate in any way. I enjoy, you know, kind of answering some of these questions and thinking about these things, because a lot of this is something I don't bat an eyelash at or think about. You know, this is just something
day-to-day kind of talking.
For many folks, this is the first time they're hearing about it. So.
Yeah, it's really important. But yeah, Ad, you've been nothing but inquisitive and seem keen to understand. So that's respectful. I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ah. So in the media, there's really not a lot out there. I couldn't tell you a well-known asexual person or aro person in the media.
Arrow, there's even fewer, and
Yeah.
often the only arrow depictions are villains or arrow ace folks like Jughead, who doesn't want to have any friends.
No.
'Cause, I mean, if you're arrow ace, why don't we want friends, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's completely just odd. I think that only and this would be a very British reference, but in one of the soaps, it might be either Coronation Street, EastEnders, or what's the other one Mum watches? Emmerdale, maybe? I think they're called. And I think there was one person that talked about being ace. No, I cannot remember who they are. I don't watch soaps very often anyway, but I just remember seeing that as quite a very recent thing. And I think it's one of those three. There aren't many soaps in the UK. But again, that was just in passing. I think I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, okay. And then thinking, they must be doing that because there isn't enough representation, which is good, but it just felt, I was like, oh, you don't see that at all.
No.
And again, it was very surface level from what I heard from just that interaction. So again, yeah, it's super interesting to think about that. And if I see more in media anytime soon, hopefully, but hopefully there is a bit more to it. But yeah, there is quite that common, just one-dimensional. This is the token person that we're gonna have, and that's enough.
And that
but
character,
it isn't. It's not enough.
And that character is going to be sex-averse,
evil,
sex-negative.
Yeah.
And no attraction whatsoever. So it's the sex-averse, sex-negative ace. What about the demisexuals? What about the sex-favorable aces? There's none of that representation. None
of that at all. Yeah, very.
But
very
also, I get it to a degree, because how do you depict demisexuality to a population that generally doesn't have any idea of that concept?
Yeah. There are ways, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's how can someone do that, or how can the
easily
do that?
I guess that people would clue in and say, aha, that's demi.
Yeah.
One of the better one of the better representations that I've liked is Todd from BoJack Horseman.
Oh, I know of BoJack Horseman. That's the cartoony style TV show, right?
Where you've got the lead character is a anthropomorphic horse, and all the characters. There's a mixture of human characters as well as anthropomorphic animals.
Right.
So Todd is quite a regular character in the show, and they actually go on an entire arc in the show where Todd comes to explore aspects of his asexuality and tries dating, and dates several people. And it's kind of exploring this lack of sexual attraction, how he's not able to find a sexual spark with anybody,
right?
And coming to grips with that. And then he also goes about and develops this ace dating app for ace folks, which is an interesting take.
That's cool.
So this is one representation where you actually go beyond the surface level minor character.
Yeah, they're actually exploring that and developing the character for it as well. I didn't know that, but that will make me want to watch it a bit more and see how that's depicted, because that's interesting. Have you seen any more? Have you had more
So
than
that's
that,
the
or-
one that jumps out to me. Other people have mentioned a few others. Trying to remember. Hugster Duke, who's wasn't able to be here today, has mentioned he's regularly in the ASPEC podcasts.
Right.
But
Yeah,
he
I
mentioned a
sort of
character from the
missed it.
Marvel series, actually.
Okay.
And I think Fluently ASPEC, a YouTube content creator, talks about this character being his favorite Ace representation.
Okay.
So let me see if I can grab that.
See who it is. Yeah. Dating apps are the worst if you're a spec. I can absolutely imagine. Unless
Yes,
it's like
absolutely.
plastered on there, or you know, very clear. But even then, it's finding others who do identify. In Marvel films,
So here's
yes,
the link. It's a blog by Fluently ASPEC. It's called My First Asexual Representation Experience, and it talks about who's the character? Spooner in the DC Legends of Tomorrow as part of the Arrowverse. So let me drop that in the chat. So there's the blog.
Oh, hang on.
So I was mistaken. It's actually the DC universe, part of the Arrowverse. But Spooner, Esperanza Spooner Cruz is the character.
Okay. DC, Marvel, it's close enough.
Yeah.
I'd be crucified by saying that to some people. Do you mind sharing that again in the chat? Sorry, because
Yeah.
I have to add you as a VIP to be allowed to send a link. I think
Okay.
so. I've done that. Because there we go. Because I don't know why the other one was fine. Oh, because it came up in. Oh, that's weird though.
It came up in yours. Chat.
But in mine, it just. So that one worked. Okay. That's really cool, and there's a whole blog about it. So that's really very cool. And Spooner, okay, that's cool. But yeah, evidently, there are not that many memorable or good depictions of people from the community in the media. Arrowverse is good, yeah. And as you can see, even like giving examples, there aren't many. Hopefully that changes and develops over time, but it would be good for people to see on a screen somewhere that they may be able to relate to, or
and to get more arrow representation as well.
I was going to say, because
these are ace representations, but what about the arrow representations?
Yeah.
Particularly allosexual aromantics who have sexual attraction. That group is absolutely villainized by society.
Right.
Because if you have sexual attraction but no romantic attraction, you must be an absolutely horrible individual, is what society says.
Yeah. They absolutely don't take into consideration the deeper level of that. But there's not really any arrow people in the media that are.
No.
That's wild. That really is quite wild.
The only one-dimensional arrow representation, if it does exist, is the arrow ace representation, where you have neither sexual nor romantic attraction.
Right. Yeah, that is mad. And what you were saying, coming back to what you were saying near the beginning of people with further minority groups, but even in these minority groups, it's like, where do you see, how can you know more about yourself when you don't see that kind
Yeah.
of stuff in the media, and even more deeper people that are in indigenous groups or Latino,
Yeah,
black
exactly.
and stuff like that's yeah.
Pseudo Suga mentioned my first rep for Ace rep was from Outer Worlds.
Oh, that's a game I need to play.
Parvati has a scene where she describes the Ace experience without saying the word. That's what you want to see. That's what it's about.
Mm.
Don't just parrot the textbook definition and say that's good enough.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very cool. So Outer Worlds Parvati.
So there's a short film coming out in the next, hopefully very soon, which depicts basically a platonic meetup in the middle of an Icelandic winter storm. And this was actually episode 14 on the podcast, where I spoke to the director and producer of the short film. But that hopefully will be coming out at some point in Pride Month.
Oh, cool.
And it's called A Rom-Com, and so there's a pun here. So it's you know, it sounds like rom-com because it's kind of the anti-romantic comedy.
Yeah.
But there's also the aro in there as well because it's an aromantic comedy.
Very, very good. I like that. I'll have to listen to that episode of the podcast because that I don't think I've heard that.
So they mentioned that hopefully they'll get it out on YouTube at some point this summer.
Okay. Oh, that's good. There's definitely need more things like that out there.
But so that's what it's called.
Rom-com. Okay. Writing that down in my notes as well. Oh yeah, I see that pop up on there as well. 15-minute meet cute.
I tend to only know the non-fiction books around asexuality and aromanticism because I find it really difficult to immerse myself in fiction for whatever reason. I just can't suspend disbelief and get into the story. Movies I can, but with books it's really hard. So I tend to default to non-fiction.
Fair.
So I don't have many great suggestions for fiction that includes Ace and Arrow rep. I do have one where I was actually I was a beta reader for the book.
Oh, okay.
And so that's where they send a book out to several folks ahead of publishing to get feedback and see what needs to be fleshed out more.
Okay.
And so this one was called Be the Sea by Clara Ward. And it takes place in the near future, like the early 2040s, late 2030s, early 2040s. And it's of an ace researcher who boards a boat in the middle of the Pacific and convinces them to take her to, I can't remember, take her somewhere where she needs to go for research. And it has a lot of different ace rep. And what's great about it is the characters are ace, but that's not the focus of the book. They happen to be ace, but that's not their main attribute. They're just a character who happens to be ace, and they really delve into other aspects of their identity.
That's interesting. That's quite cool as well. It's a good way to do it. And that's Be the Sea.
Be the Sea by Clara Ward. Here, I'll write it out.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that too. Thank you. Okay.
There's a couple of graphic novels as well that I can recommend.
Yeah, that would be cool. I know we've got a few graphic novel fans in the chat.
How to Be Ace by Rebecca Burgess. was one that came up recently. What was it called? There's also Loveless by Alice Osman.
Oh, I'm sure I've heard someone talking about that recently. Is that the same thing? That's awesome. Yeah, I recognise the cover art, and I'm not sure why or where that came from. Who brought that up? But that looks.
So that's my
familiar.
limited repertoire of fiction that includes A-spec representation.
Hey, that's more than I could give. So again, really appreciate that. It's something. That's interesting though. That makes me want to delve into that a bit more and see what else is out there too. Very good. So How to Be Ace is a memoir of growing up asexual.
And the reason you probably know of Alice Osman is because I think Alice Osman was involved in the Heartstopper series.
Oh, okay. Ah. Heartstopper I've heard of.
I believe there may be Ace Rep in Heartstopper.
Oh, okay. I'll look into that and see.
So that's probably where folks have heard of Alice Osman from.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Heartstopper series.
Mm-hmm.
But Loveless
Yeah.
by Alice Osman is kind of a great graphic novel.
Cool. Very useful.
I'm trying to see if I had anything else on my list here.
It's even if you don't, you've given us so much. But if you do, great.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Something that is very commonly confused,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in media, is the idea of sex positivity versus sex favorability.
Ooh,
So
what do you
confuse
mean
them
by that?
sometimes
So
myself.
sex positivity versus sex
And
favor.
sex favorability. I actually have a short little video in the A-Spec podcast series that talks about this.
Okay.
But sex favorability has to do with your own experiences, your own interactions towards sex. Are you favorable to being in a sexual relationship? Does the idea of having sex with someone repulse you? That's sex favorability.
Right.
Sex positivity is a more general concept around sex and its place in society. Should people who are consenting individuals have the right to have sex? That's sex positivity. Sex favorability is what is your own attitude towards sex in your own lived experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense, but I can absolutely understand getting the two mixed up.
So I would say I'm a sex indifferent, sex positive ace person.
Mm-hmm. So in society, that's okay, but
it's great. For me, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, I'll do it, but like I don't really care about it myself.
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel any closer to someone or any deeper connections. Kind of, it's not. Yeah, it's very, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I appreciate that as well. I appreciate sharing all these things. Like, yeah, there's when asking people to come on, some people might not want to be as open or forthcoming with things, and that is also okay. Yeah. But it's just appreciated that you're here. Yeah. And that you are okay sharing these things. Like it's definitely, it makes it a lot easier to understand hearing, even though you're not representing everyone, just hearing one person's point of view or their experience, and shared experience. Yeah, it's really quite useful. And just all these the different terms and the different things that can get confused. But that makes a lot of sense, the positivity and favourability. A lot easier to not mix up. When you think about favourability being the personal views or experience.
The two are often conflated.
Mm-hmm. I said views, but I meant not views, because it's the positivity is more views. Favourability is personal.
So I think I have like a 3 or 4 minute little video that talks about that based on one of the earlier episodes of the podcast.
I will watch that one too. When I watched, I think it just shared, like, it started on one and then it went to a random other one. So I think I've watched wildly different things.
Yeah.
That's still good for me. That's great, because I'm learning something new anyway. But
I've tried to separate the videos into ones that discuss asexuality, ones that discuss aromanticism.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've got other ones that may touch on other subjects. But...
yeah. Well, that's very useful. Okay. And anything else you wanted to touch on? You've done so much.
I think that's the list of things I had thought about for now.
Yeah. Has anyone got any questions? Not to put you on the spot, if you're okay to answer questions, but even just processing.
So yeah, favorability is a spectrum from I'm absolutely repulsed. I don't like it. So that would be repulsed is no, ooh, don't and allow it anywhere near me. Averse is like, no, not for me. Indifference kind of like, whatever. And favorable is, yes, I'm willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. A spectrum, yeah. Which is, I guess, even the ace and arrow umbrellas are also a spectrum for different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a sex favorability spectrum, just like there's a asexuality spectrum. There's an aromantic spectrum.
Yeah.
So it tends to be the folks, not always, but it tends to be the folks that are in the gray umbrella of asexuality who are more likely to be favorable, but not necessarily.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no two people will necessarily have the same, that they won't lie in the same place or fit in the same place.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful to catch this talk too, in brackets.
Thank you.
It's really, really useful. I'd love to talk more in future, but
there are a couple wikis out there. What's a good wiki that talks about the different identities? The LGBTQIA+ wiki has some discussions around the different micro labels. Is it okay if I pop that in the chat?
Yeah,
so
of
there's
course.
one for asexual, there's one for aromanticism, and then you can branch out from there and go to all the different micro labels under the different labels.
That's cool. See, learning more even.
And then we can get into really deep discussions. They even go into things like SAM versus non-SAM arrow aces if you want to get that specific. So folks that are arrow ace that adhere to the split attraction model, seeing sexuality and romanticism as being different, discrete concepts. And there's a class of arrow aces for them. They're no different for me. It doesn't influence my lived experience. I tend to see them as separate things myself, but there are some arrow aces, it's not important to them, so they don't really see it as being a useful tool for them.
Right. I guess it just depends on the person and what
so there's so many interesting things we can talk about that would be much more in-depth and not a 101 level.
Yeah.
So I won't go into that.
For sure. But that's why everyone, you should listen to the ASPEC podcast as well, because there are so many different things that they touch on in that, and you will be. There will be for the forthcoming episodes or the future episodes. So yeah, super useful. I love that.
So right now we've really been doing a profile on Pride. What does Ace and Arrow Pride look like to different folks? And what I'm hoping to do in the next couple of weeks, I've been building a little video about what does Ace and Arrow Pride look like. And I'm hoping to release that in the next week or two and kind of give a little sample of different experiences and what does Ace and Arrow Pride look like.
That's useful. That's very good. I'll keep an eye out for that. The logo is really cool, the wiki. I like this scroll bar on the wiki as well. I'm a sucker for colours anyway. I'm very basic. But yeah, the logo is cool. Yeah. Alright. The sunset flag was beautiful. Never knew about it before. There you go.
A lot of people don't. I only learned about it a few years ago myself. It's one of the newer flags. When did it come out?
Was that that's not the 2014
Sunset
one,
Arrow
is it? The sunset one is that even more recent?
Sunset Arrow Ace flag. Let's see. Was created in December of 2018, so it's only been around for a few years.
Damn.
So you can see if you go to that page, there's an older Arrow Ace flag, which is literally the Arrow flag stacked on top of the Ace flag.
Right.
So it's like a hybrid of the two. But
one has the black at the bottom and one has the black at the top. So the Ace is the one that
I much prefer. Yeah. I much prefer the sunset version.
Yeah.
Ace has the black on top, Arrow has the black on bottom.
Black on top. Okay. Very good. I'll be doing a pop quiz, by the way, next stream, everybody. So just you know what? That is, I learn a lot from practical, what's the word, sessions or, from doing things in a practical perspective. And so actually maybe doing a little quiz would be quite fun for a stream. That would really, and even just going through them, because then I process information so much easier when it's going in, and then I have to put that all in a PowerPoint or something. Yeah, that's an interesting thing for one of our.
I didn't realize that. So apparently the older Arrow Ace flags were created by folks who weren't Arrow Ace, and the sunset Arrow Ace flag was actually made by somebody who's Arrow Ace, and it refers to all the colors that are not green or purple.
Okay. Oh, that's
interesting. I learned something new today.
Hey, nice. Most of them are by people who aren't Arrow Ace. So the sunset is authentically Arrow Ace, really. This you could say, because someone that was Arrow Ace created that, and there's a bit more real. Oh, my ears are ringing. Thank you for that follow, by the way. I had my sound up and I've just had a big gong in my ears.
Oh no.
It's fine. Really interesting for sure. Yeah. Tai Wai, do you mind me calling you anything for short? Or would you prefer
a lot of people just call me Tai.
Okay, is that okay? Because I should have asked that at the start.
That's what most people say, because Tai Wai is a big mouthful.
But anyway, well, all right, thank you. Well, Tai, I do appreciate like your time and everything. We still we've got half an hour if you want to use it up, but I also understand we've been talking about loads of things, so if at any point
I'm
you
open
feel,
to answering, any questions, or if there's any specific thing you'd like me to discuss.
yeah, let me have a think, because there were some things that I was thinking about before, and now I feel like, when you learn some stuff and your mind is processing, there might be.
Apocalyptic
Where was
has
my
a
notes?
question.
Oh, I'd go for it.
Yeah.
Where was my...
And then maybe I can end by talking about what does Ace and Arrow Pride look like to me. Maybe we can end with that.
Yeah. As someone that identifies it as Ace and Arrow, what would be your best way to support you from a friend perspective or family or whatever? I know there might be a really obvious answer here, but I wanted to ask everyone that same question to see what answers we may have. So I know that's not specifically about terms or anything like that, but just from an intrigue point of view.
So I think one thing that a lot of Ace and Arrow folks struggle with in, I would say the broader queer community is our relationship to sex, our relationship to romance is so inherently different from other identities that those spaces, if they're very, very, and I can understand why, if it's most people are, a lot of those spaces are, talk a lot about sex, talk a lot about romance, and don't really allow for folks that don't have those experiences. So kind of keeping that in mind and being open to the fact there may be folks in the community that have a very different relationship to sex, a very different relationship to romance, and
not being so closed off about it, right? And
and also just
inclusion.
Recognizing that just because one may appear, and I know that bi and pan folks know this really well, just because one might appear to be in a relationship that appears to be straight passing doesn't mean you don't experience oppression.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
somebody could be aromantic, demisexual, absolutely. That's a possibility. I myself identify kind of like, gray ace or somewhere under the gray umbrella of asexuality, and then pretty much, I would say, purely aromantic.
That's all right, Ed, as well.
So, yeah, somebody that's demisexual but is also aromantic, they would have to have some sort of close emotional bond to experience sexual attraction with someone. It might be more than something that's just like a typical platonic friendship. There's something a little bit more. You've got to have some sort of emotional closeness with that person. So it might be, something a little bit more than a typical like Western friendship that you'd think. You got to get to know the person quite well.
Emotional and
there's a lot of overlapping terms, and it gets confusing. And what that degree of emotional closeness looks like will be different for everyone. Some folks might be, they experience emotional closeness relatively quickly. Others, it might take years before they're comfortable. So
it just varies and depends, and it could be a slow process, and it could be one that someone is trying to work out as well.
I know that Lynn Saga, for example, mentioned that for them it often takes about 6 or 7 months before they develop that emotional closeness to be able to experience the secondary attraction. For some folks it might be years, other folks it might be a little less, but it really depends on the person.
It's the whole situation dependent, isn't it?
And So I can only speak from my experience, and not being demisexual myself, I can't give you that lived experience. I can only sort of base it off what I've heard from other folks.
In terms of your lived experience, have you ever been in a situation where someone has felt a certain way towards you that you've had to kind of, I guess, set boundaries, or how have you gone around about that? That's quite an interesting thing.
So I would say the way that I actually learned I was aromantic is I was in what would be seen as a typical, typical relationship. I tried to be, in a relationship that was sexually active briefly, and have some sort of degree of romance. And it wasn't until after we broke up that, looking at things retrospectively, things started to really make sense.
Right.
Because for them, I had, this relationship developed from a friendship. I would say I developed a degree of emotional closeness with them.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a try. This was the first time I've really had first and only time I've ever been in a sort of real long-term relationship of any degree. And I could tell, immediately that there was a disconnect in the way that I felt and the way that they felt. I always felt more comfortable when we were doing things long distance.
Right.
Because it could be on my terms. And when they would come to visit, things just felt uncomfortable.
Wrong, and
it never felt quite right. And I said I'm sex indifferent. I said I was sexually active. It was mostly for their benefit. I just didn't really care. It's like, all right, we'll do this because you want to, but it's not really for me.
Yeah, that can lead to a whole range of problems. I can imagine where if you're not really sure what's going on, there's probably things that you felt maybe like, oh, why can't I feel this, or why is there something wrong with me, when there really isn't. But when you don't have the answers or know what's going on, it's hard, again, I'm sure, explaining to them when you don't know could
exactly.
be quite
it wasn't
struggle.
Until after this relationship that I really clued in and was like, I don't think I ever felt true romantic attraction to this person. I think there was definitely a degree of emotional closeness, absolutely. Like, I felt absolutely horrible breaking up with them, because I knew it was going to hurt them a lot more than it did me. And that part broke me, because I knew how hard it was going to be for them.
You're not the villain in the story either. Like, it's as silly as that sounds, but it must have been horrible going through it, and then even just realizing everything after the fact that's happened must have been quite hard as well. Wishing you'd maybe known or been able to understand what was going on, and for them to understand too, because I'm sure they had no idea, and they were just like, oh, maybe they were thinking, what's wrong with me, when actually there was nothing wrong with them either. But
no, absolutely not.
That makes sense. It even makes me think about previous experiences, and maybe that could have been behind some things, but you never know until you really delve into it, right? That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that as well, because that's
Absolutely.
A very personal thing. But I can imagine
it's not something I've talked about much on the podcast, partly because I want to give other folks time to talk about their experiences. So this is really the first time I've actually talked about this myself.
Thank you. Well, your experience is important, and that's why we've got you here as well. So that's
absolutely
super nice and appreciated. We have as well, in brackets, asked a question. How can people like me who are in the queer community act as allies to our ace people? What can we do to make queer spaces more welcome and supportive? So what you said a minute ago as well about being aware that there are people that are different to the societal
Yeah, so
relationship.
understanding that there may be folks in the community that don't have the same relationship to sex or the same relationship to romance as you, and making that space open to them. I mean, it must be absolutely difficult, if you don't have that lived experience, but be mindful of the fact that there could be folks that are, sex averse aces or romance averse arrows in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just not assume right off the bat that somebody experiences that.
Definitely good to be vocal about it, kind of make it known that you want to include people or not assume things. Communication is really, it's an obvious thing, but we don't always think about how that can work, and it's kind of just making it known, and either vocally saying this is a space for everyone, and recognizing that not everyone is going to be a certain way is definitely
also
a thing.
Helping push for aces and arrows to get equal inclusion in discrimination laws, because in the UK, asexuality does not have basically any real anti-discrimination protection like the other identities do.
Which is, again, just super wild and very strange.
So looking up some of the stuff that Yasmin Benoit has written in the Aces in the UK report.
I was going to say, I was going to ask, that would be useful. Okay.
That's obviously very UK focused, but there's many parallel experiences here in North America as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hear a lot more about that side, strangely, than us, which is weird. Yeah. Let's see, what's everyone else saying here?
And also, I would say, if of queer spaces that have ace and arrow groups, tell folks. Make it known.
Yeah, that's one of my... It is
so hard to find queer organizations with a dedicated space for ace and arrow folks. Very hard. Most of the ace and arrow groups I know of are independent of any kind of broader organization.
Right.
The one that I'm in is one of the only organizations I know of that has a specific ace and arrow group.
Right. And the others might be more general, right?
Yeah, they're kind of independent of any other sort of organization.
That's a good thing. One of the things coming away from this, I do want to kind of share things that I've learned and things that I've found out about, but also that's a very good point that I'd like to put on my actions. Because I don't just want to talk about this either. I do want to see what I can do. There's always is there something I can do? And sometimes it feels very again, could be a surface level, I don't really know. Okay, just move on with it. Or some people might do that, is what I'm saying, not something that I would do. But I always want to be okay, so there is something that you can do. There is at least something you can do in any of these kind of situations, I think, and using a platform for what it's there for, as far as I understand, is a step. But also there's social media, there's talking to friends, there's asking friends, there's amplifying voices and sharing things. There's so
Stand
much.
Up for against folks erasing demisexuality, erasing the ace experience, the arrow experience.
We talk about that a lot in this community, and saying don't be a bystander. If you see something or you hear something that is wrong, challenge it. Don't just let it slide because your stance isn't clear then, and people may witness that and feel like you're not a safe person to be around because you haven't made it clear what you stand for or who you support. So it's very, very important to be vocal, and if it's something that's going to put you in immediate danger, risk your life. There are other ways to tackle it.
Yeah.
by making sure that the person that
Yeah.
is threatened is safe,
Yeah.
calling police,
Yeah.
calling the emergency services. Like there's never a situation where you can't do anything is basically what I want to say. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Be mindful of your own safety for sure.
yeah,
Risk that.
but also just, yeah, make it clear that you are there to help and do something with action. But yeah, don't get yourself killed, of course. But that sounds like really like a selfish thing to say in a way. Yeah, be mindful. Silence is compliance. Is as they were saying. Yeah. There are so many there's so many ways, but basically, anyone that says, "Oh, there was nothing I could do," really,
Absolutely.
was there? There may have been something you can do, and even I think it can be a bit of an awful thing to witness someone not saying something. Being like, I was in a situation where someone was quiet and I spoke up, and the other person after that said, "That was really good what you did there, sticking up for that person." But then I said to them, "Really? Because I didn't know you felt that way." The other person probably didn't know you felt that way either. Would it be a good idea to maybe make that known to the person that you know, whilst you didn't say anything in that instance, even then, maybe they seemed to be a bit of a coward at the time, or hadn't been around that situation before, or maybe didn't know what to do and froze. Maybe even then, they went up to the person and said, "I'm really sorry, I didn't say anything, I didn't really know what to do." It could be that they get a cold reaction, or a kind of like, that was really shitty of you, pardon my language. But in this situation, they were like, "Oh, you know what? I appreciate that. And if you wanna know more, if you want to hear more from me, then we can talk about it," kind of thing. So, whilst not everyone has the same reaction, there's still, you can still do something, even if it wasn't quite the best.
Absolutely.
The best way. Yeah.
And recognize, if you've made a mistake, own up to it.
That gains such a lot of respect, I think. I definitely can personally say that if someone's got something wrong and it's felt offensive, and I've made that clear, the best kind of response is someone to say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I've had responses where people are like, "F you, I don't care," or, you're someone playing the victim, essentially. Like, "I can't believe you would say that to me." I don't know, but basically, just if you've made a mistake and you know you have, just admit it. Just, we can move on far easier that way than have some weird additional dramas to clear away.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, that's interesting. A survey from 2019 showed over 80% of ACEs have been victims of sexual assault. We may not always see the direction something is heading until it's too late. Yeah, that's awful.
Yasmin Benoit talked a lot about that in the ACEs in the UK report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. There's a really high degree of sexual assault within the ACE community. Because there's this unfortunate, and the media does this as well, that you have to be fixed, and I will be the person to fix you.
God. Yeah.
There's actually a really problematic episode of, what was it? House.
Oh.
The TV show House, where basically house is determined to fix this asexual person, figure out how he's going to fix their asexuality. And it's just absolutely disgusting.
As if it's something that is, yeah, that is awful. I can.
Oh yeah, pressuring, basically ignore.
How do you know you don't like
how do
this
you know?
kind of? Oh God,
I've been told many times by folks, how do you actually know your ace? How do you actually know your arrow? Have you not tried it? I'm like,
oh my goodness. I think it's just really quite insensitive to say things like that anyway. But it's quite obvious, isn't it, that these are things that you haven't just kind of one day gone, hey, I'm this is me. It's not like an overnight decision that yeah. Is it lupus? No, it's just queerphobia. Honestly, like, and how do you know if you haven't tried it, or you just how do you know if you haven't tried it with me as well? That whole thing about someone thinking that they can change you from who they are. I've had countless friends who, a couple of lesbian friends, for instance, where a guy will approach and be like, hey, trying it on with them, and no thank you, I'm actually not into men. And the very common thing of, how do you know if you haven't tried it with one, or I could be that one that changes your mind. It's like, well, and then it's, if it is someone who is cishet, maybe you could turn it around and say, well, maybe my friend over here could be the one that changes you, if this like, not about the lesbian friend, but about some, also another guy that, I don't know, when the shoe's put on the other foot, you see them kind of go, oh no, I wouldn't do that. Like, case in point, it's just ridiculous. But I've seen that a lot, and I've seen when I've had female partners in the past, and people have approached us, and we're like, well, we're not friends, we're out on a date or whatever, and a guy will be like, hey, I could take you both home then. It's like, no, just, it's horrible. So yeah, I've experienced on those levels, but I can imagine, yeah, a lot of that happens with people just saying, how do you know, or challenging it just because they feel otherwise.
I had somebody at Pride come up to me last year and, like, for 10 minutes interrogated me on how I could know that I'm ace, how I could know that I'm arrow. And I finally, one of my friends was like, hey, Tyler, can you come talk to me for a second? And saved me, because I was knowing so tired.
Yeah, probably visibly seeing that you were just not so having a good interaction. I couldn't
escape.
And that was at Pride. Was that from
10 straight minutes? It's like, why? I told you no.
God.
Just, that should be enough.
Was that from someone within the community?
Apparently.
Pride, or... It's frustrating.
Yeah, at a Pride festival here.
At Pride, no less. Things can still happen at Pride, for sure. Yeah. There will be ignorant people no matter where you go, but there will also be good people in places too. Hopefully, I can't guarantee this, but I've, from my personal lived experience, I've had a lot of bad experiences, and I've had a lot of good experiences, and some come out of completely unpredictable situations, but definitely at Pride there have been some I remember having when I identified as bisexual, that I had a bisexual flag, and it was later. I was supposed to go home during the day while it was still light outside, because the parade finished while it was still light. But we ended up going to a gay bar, and everyone was dancing on tables, and it was dark out, and anyway, everyone had had a few drinks, and there were, when going to the toilet, I remember having a few people asking why bi, and there were people that were celebrating Pride, and yeah, so there's definitely things in the community as well, sadly, and there are a lot of people that talk about it, but it doesn't mean that it will stop people doing it. You hope that it does, but there are some people that may not change their minds, and there's not a lot you can do about that other than just still stand by yourself and be vocal about it, I guess. When it's more frustrating when people ask, are you sure you are loved as a Christian that's queer? There's a lot of things that come under like religious talk, I'm sure. That's
we had a whole episode on religion and asexuality and just all the myriad of difficult things to navigate on that.
I think I might have seen that one, or listened to it at least last week.
Kami Anya was really great.
Yeah.
They're a fellow PhD, and they've got a wealth of knowledge in a lot of those subjects.
Just reading the other stuff as well. I suppose it would be the some in every place. Yeah, very difficult. All right. Well, thank you so much. I realise we're coming to the end. I would like, I don't know if you're going to be raiding out soon as well.
Yeah, I will be.
I would like to raid whoever's in the Pride train at the moment, and I need to get that window up.
I'll set up a raid on my channel as well.
Awesome.
Do a double raid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we want to use our own messages, or do we want to use a joint message?
We could do a joint message. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, a double raid message would be cool. What should we say? Double. I don't know. Oh, warrior, please, no. There's no negativity, or there's nothing to be sorry for. Oh, we could do the Pride double raid coming through. That's like the Pride train message, but with double raid coming through. Can you see that on yours, Ty?
Yeah, I mean, we are both part of the guild, but we also want to make, I think, clear
maybe
that, this is something
maybe it's not
different.
us. Yeah,
not part of the that we're not part of the raid.
The actual raid train. Yeah, maybe that is a bit confusing. So we could have the Kappas, the Kappa prides, but maybe double. Let me move that over. Just be double pride raid coming through, or any suggestions? Oh, why have I just... Okay. Hello, Fader as well. Hello. Yeah, warrior, please don't be sorry. You're all good. Now.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, I have all sorts of ace ones, but not everybody's going to have access to them.
Oh yeah.
There is a global ace emote.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, so there's one. So there's asexual pride, this one.
Okay.
There's not a global arrow, but there is an asexual one.
So we could add that with us.
Yeah, so we could use like the green and purple hearts.
That's true.
Yeah, so
Coloured heart emojis is, yeah. Heart emojis. And also the train is about to go to someone
it's
else.
okay. Warrior for Life 9761. Yeah, Warrior for Life 9761 is actually late deaf, so they require captions to understand.
We've been trying to get captions on my.
Yeah, I got to do the same for my channel.
Mm-hmm. That is definitely something I need to prioritize, actually.
Yeah, I need to switch over to regular OBS because it's got more native support for captions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you. We could have, let me see, double probably coming through with the, does anyone have the access? Oh, I could just get it by searching, can't I? Heart emojis.
Which?
So the coloured heart emojis.
I think you might have to use the Unicode ones.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we have green. We have white.
We need gray. We need black, gray, white, green, and purple.
Purple. Is there a grey one? Or is there
on
just
mobile,
a white?
On iOS there is, but not on Android.
Okay. Oh, we've got black, grey.
So people will sometimes use like a gray koala instead of a.
Cool.
We'll sometimes use like a gray moon or gray koala in place of the gray heart if they can't get it.
Okay. Oh yeah, this. So in order.
So we could do green. We could do. It would be green, white, gray, black. Green, white, gray, black, and then we'll go the other direction. Green, white, gray, black. And then from the black we'll go black, gray, white, purple.
Purple. Okay. And
like this. Something like that.
All right.
So we could do that, and then double pride raid coming through. And then do you want to mention Phoebe and Ty?
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise you could say it and then people aren't sure where the double raid is. So. Oh, that's.
Something like that.
That is lovely. Yeah. Let's go with it.
I gotta check who's live for the.
Yeah. So they will just be going over from Slushy VRC to Strix Line. I wanna. It's this
Thanks.
Strix Line, and then I just
so
want
to set that up on my side as well.
Yeah. Let's see that it's gone through, because they may... Good work, great work, yeah. I need to just double check that that works my end. Yep. Okay, so yep, they have gone in. So at least we have a target. And
Yeah.
Ty, I just want to say again, thank you so much for giving your time, 3 whole hours of your time, and then some.
Absolutely.
Because of, you know, the prep and stuff for this. Would love to talk to you again, if that's okay. Because I'm sure there'll be tons more questions that I have following this that I just haven't processed yet. Neurodivergent brain and all. But really appreciate it, and I think the community would also probably say the same thing. Like your experience and your knowledge is so important to be sharing with us and with anyone that's been watching. So it's definitely given me some food for thought to in things to do going forward. So just thank you so much. I feel so good doing these kind of things, and
Me too.
I've been so excited to talk about this because I never had a conversation, a proper conversation, and a more in depth about all of this before now at all, really. It's been very, very, very surface level, and either one or the other, and not both, and not much at all. So yeah, thank you so much, and I guess we'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. For folks that want to know when the next podcast will be, it will be tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. British summertime, and we'll be chatting with Mctastic, a fellow Fruity Stream Team member. It's a stream team I'm a part of.
Cool. All right. Everyone, make sure, because you just did one on Friday as well, right? That's amazing. Yeah. All right. I'll keep my eyes peeled. Tomorrow night, 11 p.m. as well. That's when I'm kind of winding down.
UK time.
It's when I'm kind of winding down after streams and stuff. So it's like that's a really perfect time to be able to catch it live too. So everyone, make sure you are following, and let's put the link in chat as well.
And then there's always the VODs you can catch on the YouTube afterwards if you ever miss them.
Yeah, you've got them there. Amazing, brilliant. All right. In that case, should I?
Next line, we'll set that up.
Yeah. And then go into.
Make sure I got the right spelling. All right, it's been set up.
All right, same. Yes, same. All right. Do you want to press it together when it's time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to swap over to the ending soon screen.
All right. We go from
finish up here, and then we'll raid out.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you.
Thanks so much,
tomorrow.
Folks.
Bye.
And, should we raid?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's do it.